Tonight, on the eve of Pedro Martinez's induction into the Baseball Hall of Fame, I'm thrilled to introduce Michael Silverman, the co-author of Pedro's memoir, Pedro. Michael Silverman has been covering the Red Sox and Major League Baseball for the Boston Herald since 1995, and he has voted for the Baseball Hall of Fame since 2007.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you to Brookline Booksmith. This is one of my favorite bookstores, independent bookstores or otherwise. I think I learned or perfected the art of benign parenting, benign neglect parenting here by just letting my kids roam because I was off roaming myself. And I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I know the Red Sox aren't going to play for another hour, but you and I both know what's going to happen tonight. I just came back from LA, where I saw 4 of the increasingly awful games I've ever seen before this team. It's really awful. So anyway, I'm glad you guys are here tonight. I'm glad I'm not in Houston, and I'm very glad actually that I will be going to Cooperstown as of tomorrow, where a much happier Red Sox event is going to take place. I could not, and please excuse me if I start to cough violently, I'm okay, but I'm just a lingering cold, and I'm going to be up here talking for a while, longer than my bar mitzvah, so we'll see what I can do. I couldn't be much more excited to witness the induction of Pedro, along with Randy Johnson, Craig Biggio, and John Smoltz, into the Hall of Fame on Sunday. I had the privilege of covering all 7 years of Pedro's career with the Red Sox. His 1999 and 2000 seasons, when he dominated not only hitters in the height of the steroid era, but also a time when he dominated all other starters. It was incredible. There was no close second to Pedro in those years. After many of Pedro's starts in those seasons, manager Jimmy Williams would sometimes stop in the middle of his sessions with the Red Sox media and ask us, quite seriously, "I really hope you all understand what it is you're seeing here. This young man is doing things with a baseball that I've never seen done before, and I don't think will be done again for a long time. Please take the time to appreciate what he's doing out there. You're witnessing something very special." Pedro's Red Sox career spanned 1998 to 2004. He arrived one season after Roger Clemens left, and he told us all that he was not here to replace the Rocket. He was here to be himself, and he was a man of his word. Very quickly, we realized that Pedro was not Clemens. For one thing, Pedro's English was so much better than Roger's. Clemens could and would mangle the English language almost every time he opened his mouth. Pedro, on the other hand, spoke English, his second language, with an uncanny knack for just the right idiom, with perfect timing, and to our undying gratitude, without a filter. Pedro never tried to cover up what he was feeling. He seldom saw the downside to expressing his honest thoughts to our questions. Like late in the 2001 season, when he kept being asked to pitch, despite the intense pain in his shoulder, he didn't try to mask the hurt in his voice or wipe away the tears in his eyes. When he got sick of a line of questioning, he would blurt out whatever came to mind. One too many Yankees-Red Sox rivalry question? Well, you got this. "I don't believe in damn curses. Wake up the Bambino and have me face him. Maybe I'll drill him in the ass." Yankees owner George Steinbrenner wanted MLB to launch an investigation into Pedro just because he happened to send Alfonso Soriano and Derek Jeter to the hospital with 2 hit by pitches in the same game. Pedro's response? "Georgie Porgy, he might buy the whole league, but he doesn't have enough money to buy fear to put in my heart." By the way, and this is in the book, Pedro told his teammates after the Yankees game that at least I gave him a discount on an ambulance. They got a 2-for-1. In 2004, when the Yankees hitters once again got the better of him in one of his starts against him, he let his guard down. This alarmed the Red Sox front office, while at the same time it was like dumping a barrel of chum into the sea of Yankees fans. When he said, "What can I say? Just tip my hat and call the Yankees my daddies." The next time Pedro pitched at Yankee Stadium, the fans, of course, let Pedro have it with those thunderous "Who's your daddy" chants. After the game, after Pedro took a nice long shower and finally showed up at his press conference, he knew exactly how to respond to the inevitable question about those "Who's your daddy" chants. And he said this, You know what? It actually made me feel really, really good. I actually realized that I was somebody important because I caught the attention of 60,000 people, plus you guys, plus the whole world, watching a guy that, if you reverse the time back 15 years ago, I was sitting under a mango tree without 50 cents to actually pay for a bus. And today I was the center of attention of the whole city of New York. Who talks like that anymore? Who pitches like Pedro anymore? There's a few in the game, like Clayton Kershaw, Felix Hernandez, Chris Sale, maybe Matt Harvey, maybe Jose Fernandez, who have close to the skill set that Pedro had. And maybe they are in the middle of forging their own Hall of Fame careers. But of all these great players, I believe that it's Pedro who rises to the top when it comes to not just baseball tools and baseball greatness, but also a personality and personal history that make him, in my humble opinion, a most worthy subject for a book about his life and his career. Obviously, as co-author of his memoir, that qualifies as pretty self-evident. But when I first met Pedro in 1997, I certainly had no idea of whom I was dealing with. He was coming off a Cy Young season with the Expos when Dan Duquette traded for him, and this came a season after Clemens had left. In that 1999 season, the Red Sox had no ace in their rotation, and they also had a really bad season. Can you imagine what that was like? No. I'll bet you can. But anyway, here was Pedro, this 26-year-old bright and smiley guy who was kind of short and slight of build, especially compared to the big and burly Clemens. He said he was there to be himself, but who was this guy? Nobody in Boston knew much at all about him. I had heard he had a reputation as someone who hit a lot of batters, pretty cocky kind of guy. But in that press conference, he came off as confident, yes, sure of himself, but not in a jerky sort of way. He seemed very friendly and bright and pretty funny. In fact, he was actually quite charming. Without really thinking about it too much, I went up to him after the press conference, introduced myself, and then invited myself down to the Dominican Republic to visit him and see where he grew up and talk to him. What do you think about that? Well, Pedro said, sure, why not? Which definitely surprised me, but I played it cool. We went about setting it up. Luckily, my sports editor at the time thought it was a good idea too, and they told me to go on down there. This was November of 1997, and I went down for 3 days. For the first 2 days, my photographer and I visited Pedro's hometown of Manoguayabo. We saw the school and church that Pedro had built there. We talked to some cousins of his. We saw the main baseball stadium, Quisqueya, and got great stuff, but no Pedro. My Pedro was getting a little antsy, which only made me a little more nervous. I heard that Pedro was dealing with the death of a friend of his, and that's why I hadn't seen him. I couldn't do anything about that, and that was terrible, but still, I couldn't come back to Boston without talking to Pedro. Finally, I'm in my hotel room the morning of the third day, waiting by the phone. Remember, no cell phones back then. And Pedro called. He said he'd be at the hotel in 5 minutes. I hung up the phone. I did a few cartwheels. I went down to the lobby with the photographer, and sure enough, 55 minutes later, Pedro drove up. We had a great day. We went up to his apartment, which he said he'd never brought a reporter up to before. His sister made me some papaya juice. He showed me the old Toyota Corolla he had bought with his signing bonus from the Dodgers. Our photographer got some great shots of him out on his balcony. The Herald got its story. Everybody was happy. And that's where my relationship with Pedro began, on an unusually positive and intimate note, to be sure. I know that my visit to the Dominican Republic months before helped my working relationship with him the following spring training when he launched his Red Sox career. By then, Pedro had signed his 7-year extension with the Red Sox. By the way, the fact that he did not let on to me or give me the tip-off that he and the Red Sox were already talking about that extension when I visited him still sort of rankles me. But anyway, he was going to be with the Red Sox for maybe 7 years if the Red Sox picked up his option year for 2004. We all know how Pedro's career went with the Red Sox. With the exception of 2001 when he got hurt, 1998 through 2002 were 4 remarkable seasons, with 1999 and 2000, his Cy Young seasons, arguably the 2 greatest seasons for a pitcher in the modern era. In the middle of that run in 2000, we were in Baltimore. He was not pitching that day and was just sitting alone at his locker. We started chatting about this and that, And I told him that I thought that his career, the stories of his childhood, how he got signed by the Dodgers, how the Dodgers didn't believe in him, how he went from a nobody to a real big deal, that would make a great book someday. He gave me one of his looks, kind of amused, kind of suspicious. He saw right through me. He said, "Why, Silver, do you want to write that book?" I knew better by then to never be anything less than direct with Pedro. So I said, "Sure, of course I did." He laughed and said, "Well, I agree, it'd be a great book, but I'm not ready to do anything like that. Not now. I'm still pitching. But if I do decide to one day, you can write it." That was that. Nothing in writing, but enough for me to hold on to for however long it took for Pedro to be ready. Turned out it was a really long time. We talk about it every now and then. I remember during the World Series at Yankee Stadium in 2009, 9 years after we first spoke about the book, he walked with me through Yankee Stadium and brought up how much fun doing the book would be, all the stories he had to tell. Great. I'm not holding my breath, but I sort of am. Pedro retired after the 2009 season. 3 more years go by. June of 2012, I get the call. "Pedro's ready to do his book now, and he wants to work with you." I was thrilled. We went to work soon after that. I spent most of 2013 doing third-party interviews, speaking with close to 70 different Martinez family members, friends, teammates, coaches, managers, general managers, and had many long lunches with Pedro here in Boston when he was in town. A day or two after the Red Sox won the World Series in 2013, I was on a flight to Miami to meet with him some more. I was on the flight with him and his mother and her friend. We flew to the Dominican Republic for the first of my 2 trips there to spend time with him in his home country. We spent one amazing afternoon at Campo Las Palmas, which is the Dodgers' famed baseball academy, the first built by a major league team in the Dominican Republic, where Pedro barged into an English lesson with young Dodgers players, and he gave an impromptu lecture to them. He still knew all the coaches and the groundskeepers, and we walked all around the grounds, where as a skinny teenager, he had to convince the Dodgers that he was worth signing. Most of our time we spent at his La Finca, which is the modest grounds where he grew up in Mono Guayabo. He and his wife Carolina have another, bigger, nicer house nearby, but La Finca encompasses a small patch of land, including the foundation of the shack where Pedro and his 5 brothers and siblings and their parents grew up. And yes, the mango tree that Pedro spoke of in Yankee Stadium, it still stands there. La Finca is Pedro's safe place. It's sacred grounds. He gardens there, he raises chickens, he directs a crew of young helpers, many of them cousins and nephews and nieces, all of them long time entrusted to do whatever that needs to be doing, clambering up coconut trees to cut off some coconuts, wash his car, doesn't matter. He keeps them busy. It's where La Finca is where Pedro goes to recharge and reconnect to his original roots. And if you read Pedro, you'll quickly find yourself there. That's where Pedro's story begins. It's where his roots run the deepest. We had our best interviews there, sitting on a patio with the chickens running around, children and helpers always running in and out, guests stopping by like Vladimir Guerrero for a loud game of dominoes, Pedro getting up just to start weeding in his garden. We plowed through his career. I wrapped up all the interviews. I sent the first draft to Pedro in order for him to take his crack at it, as well as my editor at Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, Susan Canavan, and much of 2014 was spent revising and rewriting until miracle of miracles, this May the book came out. Pedro's happy with it. I'm happy with it. If you get a chance to read it, I hope you will be too. I'm going to read a chapter in Pedro. It's a second chapter entitled Heart of a Lion. Let you know what's going on. It's 1988, and Pedro's 16 years old. His older brother Ramon has already signed with the Dodgers, and with that signing bonus, the Martinez family got their first refrigerator, and that money pretty much lifted them out of poverty that they had been in. Now Pedro idolizes Ramon, and he's fixated on following in his footsteps. And even though baseball-wise, he's nothing at all like him. Pedro is this lean, quiet, strong, well-built, 6'4". He's a physical specimen, and he throws very hard. He's got great command. He's a rising star with the Dodgers. And Pedro's like the beaver to Ramon's Wally. He's the pesky younger brother. He's short, maybe 5'8". He's very skinny, doesn't throw hard. But because he's Ramon's brother and has begged him over and over to bring him along to Campo Las Palmas, he gets into the academy, and finally he gets a chance for a tryout with the Dodgers. Pedro thinks he did a great job, but as we will soon discover, he's almost all alone with that opinion. Chapter 2, Heart of a Lion. I walked off the field at Campo Las Palmas calmly. I had pitched well, I thought, firing in fastballs as hard as I could. Pow, pow, pow! And I put on a good show. I was pitching in front of all the coaches and scouts who had been Ramon's coaches too. They knew who I was, but unless I was there on the best days, when Ramon asked me to play catch with him because he had nobody else, they hadn't seen me throw yet. I was about half a foot shorter than Ramon, a little 16-year-old whippet who would try to throw that ball back to him with perfect mechanics and with as much high cheese as I could muster. I always hoped the other coaches were taking a little peek to see how fast and hard I was throwing. No one else thought this, but I knew that I was throwing hard enough, that my stuff was good enough. After all, if Ramon was there, I was supposed to be with him. Where he belonged, I belonged. If he didn't want me to come with him one day, then it was my job to convince him otherwise. I must have been one pain in the ass. Once I turned 16 in October 1987, Ramon helped arrange a tryout. There were others there, too, that day. I didn't dwell on the fact that the other 16 and 17-year-olds were much taller, much stronger, and more filled out than I was. The standard practice of the Dodgers back then was not to sign a pitcher less than 6 feet tall. I was at least 3 inches shy of that. They could notice a difference if they felt like it, but I didn't see it. If someone had pointed out the differences to me, I would have only pretended to listen. I didn't want to hear that I was different or looked different, as if that somehow correlated to not belonging there. I didn't see any connection. I knew what the deal was and what my deal was. I belonged there. I had been coming there for more than 4 years. Anytime I was on a baseball diamond, I was comfortable. Throwing off the Campo Las Palmas mound felt natural to me. I was not intimidated by my surroundings or my competition. I had made up my mind when I was 12 that I would be the next Martinez to pitch for the Dodgers. So there I was, at a tryout that I considered to be a formality. The dirt path from the field became a sidewalk leading to the Campo's offices and locker rooms. I took off my cleats and walked in my socks to where the players scraped the caked-in clay and mud out from the bottom of their shoes. I started clapping my cleats together, knocking out the biggest clods, when, in between claps, I heard my name. I looked around. Nobody was calling for me. I heard it again. Pedro. Then, little brother. I looked across the sidewalk to where the noises were coming from and saw that the window slats from the coach's office were open. Now I understood exactly who was talking about me. The shock was what they were saying. Ramon is a superb athlete. This one, he's not going to develop. He threw fine. Not great, not terrible, but really, was he anything special? Don't ask me. That's none of my business. I'm in charge of outfielders. What do I know about pitching? You saw that he wasn't throwing that hard, maybe 82 miles an hour. I guess he'll get stronger. He's just 16, but he's so skinny, so thin. So was Ramon, but at least he had some height. This one's not even close to 6 feet. To be honest, there's really nothing I like so much. My best friend, Marino Alcala, walked by. He saw that I was staring at a window with grates on it. What's the matter, Pedro? Softly I said, the coaches. They're talking about me. I thought for sure they were going to sign me, but now I don't know. As the doubters continued to doubt, I started to feel the ground beneath me giving way. Until that moment, I had never heard anyone tell me I didn't have what it took to be a professional pitcher. It had never occurred to me that I would not be allowed to reach my goal. Each time I heard one of the coaches find a new phrase to describe how I was a scraggly, no good, never amount to anything piece of nothing, it felt like a machete took another hack at the branch I was standing on, and I could hear the frightening, splintering sound as the branch began to give way under my scrawny legs and send me tumbling down into a black void so deep I couldn't fathom where I'd land. Then I heard a voice, a high-pitched voice, cut through the others and halt my fall. "He's got the heart of a lion." Eliodoro Arias was speaking. Unmistakably Eliodoro. Ramon's pitching coach and the pitching coach at the academy, Eliodoro was a soft-spoken man who seldom raised his voice, but when he did, his authority went unchallenged. He was in command at Campo Las Palmas. He knew Ramon the best, and he knew my family the best of anyone there. He had been watching my tryout closely, looking where others were not. Eliodoro had spoken with me before and after the tryout. He knew what I was about. He had locked eyes with me, and I never blinked back at his intense, dark eyes. He did not see an ounce of fear. He sensed that I would show everyone that what they saw on the outside bore no resemblance to what was on the inside. "Look inside my heart," I was saying. "There you'll find the answer you're looking for." Eliodoro said, "I saw the determination in Pedro's eyes. He did not have anything else. He was short, he was skinny, his pitches were not impressive, his arm wasn't that good. What he had, though, was determination. It was etched on his face, not determination in his pitches, but in his eyes. He knew what he was looking for." Eliodoro told Ralph Avila, who was in charge of the academy for the Dodgers, "I'll work with him, but I'll need time. It's good if he stays here." They called Ramon to tell him that they wanted to take a chance on me. He said to please wait to sign me. I was in the middle of school when I had the tryout, and Ramon said, "No, wait, let him finish school. He has to stay in school." So I had no choice, really. I had to listen to Ramon. Eliodoro said it was easy to keep an eye on me on the practice field. Just look for the small and skinny one. In drills, I ran the fastest. I was the one running to pick up balls, doing whatever I could to catch the eye of the coaches and stand out from players and pitchers who were bigger, stronger, and more skilled than I was. I had questions about everything, and when coaches told me what to do, I was able to translate their expertise into solid results. Little by little, I improved, and my skills, as Eliodoro said, unfolded with impressive charm. This was his best weapon. He knew that he could not let himself be carried away by emotions and commit errors. No matter how enthusiastically and hard I practiced or played, I still could not mask the 8 to 12 mile per hour differential between my best fastball and what everyone else was throwing. I just did not have the size and strength. My fastball was not explosive, and my curveball was not the best, and I had no changeup. I needed something besides determination. What I had was location. Loads of it. I could hit the farthest corners of the black on home plate if I wanted to, which meant that I could dominate a batter equally as well as a pitcher who was throwing 90 to 92 miles an hour. Eliodoro said he began to enjoy the art of pitching, and his buddies could appreciate that he could get batters out in spite of his small size. If Pedro had been a power pitcher from the beginning of his career, perhaps he would not have been so great. The fact that he had to compete with so much talent that was at Campo Las Palmas forced him to develop his ability to concentrate, his intelligence, and above all, the ability to throw all of his pitches with excellent control. I got the nickname El Finito, which translates roughly to skilled, finely tuned, fine, a nod to my desire and ability to throw to the farthest corners of home plate. Nobody had taught me that control. It came with me from Mano Guayabo, and thank goodness I had it. Because Eliodoro had worked with Ramon and understood our family situation, he was curious and willing to see if another brother could make it too. He was very direct with me, though. He told me if I stayed at the academy, I couldn't live there. He told me that if I had to come in the afternoon after I had finished my classes, play my baseball, and then go home in the evening, sleep at home, and come back the next day after school. The bus rides were 1.5 hours each way. The Guerra and San Isidro Guerra bus lines. Each day, Eliodoro would give me exact change, not a single peso more, for the round-trip bus fare. What he didn't tell me then, and I'm glad he didn't, was that my shot at becoming a ball player who could ever pitch his way off the island was not a good one. I thought he was okay, said Eliodoro, but he was not a professional baseball player. He needed to be a student. Those were long, long days during the school year when I was going to the academy. Once I got out of my school clothes, I played baseball, working out and training in the hottest part of a Dominican day. There was a workout room with 5-pound cuff weights, tube pulls for the elbows, this little machine that Eliodoro designed with a ball attached in the middle of a wire. I'd spin the ball over and over with no resistance just to get the feel of the ball rolling off my fingers and fingertips. I would spend so much time in there, building up my shoulder, my elbow, my hands, my fingers. Some of the pitchers worked as hard as I did, but not all. And those who did keep up with me, most of them never made it. When school was over for the year, I could stop commuting back and forth from Mono Guayabo and just stay at the academy like everyone else. The food was good and there was plenty of it. One of the workers would head into the sugarcane fields each day, collect the canes, clean them up, and get the juice out. Every day that would be our juice, sugarcane juice. There were mango trees everywhere too. When they were in season and we were hungry, we'd just go over to the nearest tree and snack on one. I remember once Ralph Avila gathered everyone into the workout room. Somebody had been goofing off and Avila was pissed. It wasn't me, and I really didn't know who it was who had broken a rule. Raul Mondesi was always a solid suspect. Raul and a couple of his friends were always the hardest to control. This time Avila came in and he started pounding the table, berating all of us for messing around when we should have been focused on why we were all there. Ralph said, "I don't see anybody here who's good enough to become a big leaguer. Nobody. If anybody here feels like they're going to be a big leaguer, raise your hand. Go ahead. I want to see who thinks they belong." So I stood up. I raised my hand. I was all alone. I said, "I don't know about everyone else, but I'm going to be a big leaguer." Everybody laughed. I was serious, though. I was also young enough not to recognize that Ralph really didn't want anybody speaking up right then and there. Avila told me, "Shut up and sit down." I had to pay off Sabao with 20 pesos just so he wouldn't shoot me. Sabao was the guard at Campo Las Palmas, and in his guardhouse next to the rolling gate, Sabao kept a shotgun and a bottle of rum, too. At dusk, when the two baseball diamonds quieted down in the sweet, cooling air, the only action was in the buildings that separated the two fields. I'd run from field to field, back and forth from the kitchens to the fields, taking a few laps around the outfields. When there was actual running drills, I'd always make sure I finished first, even if that meant sprinting from the pack at the end. I always wanted to be first. The coaches, especially Eliodoro, thought I worked out too much and ran too much. At the end of the day, if I had to get back from the backfield to the dormitory, it was no more than a quarter of a mile, the coaches wouldn't want me to run even that distance. I never listened. Eliodoro was on to me, though. One late afternoon, he scared the crap out of me. "Martinez!" I froze at the sound of that voice of his. Even when he spoke at normal volume, his high voice sliced the air like a sword. His voice terrified me. I looked up, and there he was, standing on the back balcony of the dormitory, someplace where you never saw a coach. He had seen me running up to the dormitory. "Martinez, didn't I say not to run too much? Didn't I? If I see you running again, I'm going to fine you." Eliodoro did not issue idle threats. I knew that. None of the coaches did. None of us ever spoke back to them or questioned them. We'd be in big trouble if we did, and the threat of being sent home was always on my mind. I'm sure it was on everyone else's too. I was Eliodoro's special project anyway. He was in charge of packing some pounds on me, and running hurt that effort. They had me on all kinds of multivitamins and medicines after they saw how little I would eat, and I never ate a lot, even as a kid. I was skinny when I got to Campo Las Palmas, and I was skinny when I left, but they tried to get me to eat, just like they tried to stop me from running. Not much change in the end. I never stopped running because that's what Ramon had taught me. He said that's how you'll build strength. It's all in your legs, your lower body. So I would wait until Eliodoro and the other coaches had left. I didn't go out until after the sun set, a better time to run anyway when the day had cooled off. So once the coaches were gone, my only worry was to make sure that in his rum haze, Sabao would not be startled into thinking I was an intruder or some large upright animal that needed to be brought down. Plus, I needed him to be my lookout in case a coach was lurking. "Sabao, here's 20 pesos. I'm running. If anybody comes, just scream." He never screamed. I never got shot. When I ran, I flew. I just flew away. I was out. I could sweep aside the whispers of the doubters, those who didn't think I belonged at the campo. I could clear my mind of any doubts that had crept in that day, any fears I had of whether or not I would ever leave the camp the way I wanted to leave it, headed to the States and not back to Mono Guayabo. I had enough time during the day to improve my fundamentals and refine the command of my pitches, My runs were where I could simply spin and dance through my mind, jogging along the dirt of the warning tracks and dirt paths along the perimeter of the campo. I'd focus on the rhythmic scrapes of my sneakers landing on the sand and dirt, the in and out of my breathing, and I would run and run and run. My time in the Dominican Summer League in the summers of 1988 and 99 were not so much about results as about establishing a solid foundation for pitching. My numbers were good, but more importantly, Eliodoro kept my head on straight and facing in the right direction. Eliodoro said, he learned every day, he worked hard. He would help the players in tryouts, and he became a man who began drawing comments from other summer teams, but still he was Ramon's brother. But he liked this. His idol was Ramon. I still battled bouts of wildness as a pitcher. My velocity crept up into the mid to upper 80s, but my ball started to move all over the place. I wasn't ready yet to harness the speed I had in my hands. For the first time, I watched a video of myself, and I learned what it meant to be flying open, which is when you rotate your upper body too soon after the ball's release, and that's when you lose control. When I flew open, or sometimes when I didn't, my wildness got me in trouble. One time we were playing Montreal's Summer League team, and I had nothing. I started off with 4 balls, and then I walked the next 2 batters. The bases were loaded, no outs, and the next batter hit a double off the wall. Cleared the bases. Everybody scored. I was furious. Eliodoro came out for a quick chat and said, it doesn't matter, just keep pitching. So I was still mad when this little kid from Bani, wearing a helmet with a double flap on it, came up to bat, and I fell behind again. With my next pitch, I hit him square in the head, right on the ear flap, with a 90-mile-per-hour fastball. Pow! The kid fell to the ground, and he started to go into convulsions. Everyone came running out of the dugouts. Somebody dragged out a hose and started to spray him down, hoping that would cool him off. Eliodoro ran out to the mound and started to speak sternly to me. So, you hit him on purpose? I shook my head and looked down at the ground. Look at me. Tell me, did you hit him on purpose? No, it wasn't on purpose. Pedro, did you hit him on purpose? No, I didn't. I was telling him the truth, but I didn't think he believed me. I was devastated. I'd been pitching so poorly, I thought he was going to yank me off the mound. He didn't, though. I stayed in for a little while longer, but when I did come out, I sat at the far end of the bench, miserable, terrified about what lay in store for me. Eliodoro told me that we were going to talk once we got back to the academy. When we got back, I didn't want to get off the bus. I was the last one off. I had my cleats in my hand, my glove and my jacket, and as I passed by the door to the coach's office in my socks, I was tiptoeing. Hey, Martinez, let's talk. All I could think of was, whoa, I thought I had snuck by him. Eliodoro asked me again, did you hit him on purpose? I thought, oh man. All I could say was, no, I didn't hit him on purpose. Eliodoro stared into my eyes. I could barely look back. Then I saw what looked like the tiniest smile flash across his face. He said, on purpose or not on purpose, don't stop doing that. You better continue doing exactly that. That's the only way you're going to have success in the big leagues. I know it wasn't on purpose, but you have to do that sometimes. He told me a story about how he was pitching to his brother once, and his brother got him the first time, then a second time. The third time, Eliodoro's brother got a pitch in the ribs. Eliodoro's eyes locked in on me. Never quit pitching inside. Thank you very much. Well, it's kind of a double-edged, a little passive-aggressive. He kind of said that, look, Grady made a mistake. Everyone could see. I thought I was done. Everyone on the team could see that I was done. Whenever Pedro said, he shoots at the sky and does this whole thing. And then Grady walked up to him and said, can you get one more guy? And we all know what happened. He got lit up again. And Pedro afterwards said, look, I know that Grady made the wrong decision, but at the time I was still throwing in the mid-90s, and I should have got those guys out who hit me. So he said, I feel very badly for what happened to Grady, but ultimately I bore the responsibility for what happened. more in body type. I'll take your latter part first with Lincecum. Very different mechanics. The delivery's really different. Lincecum is all herky-jerky, and now I think he's got the degenerative hip problem they discovered. So, and Lincecum's high peak was a lot shorter than Pedro's. Maddox, Pedro had a better fastball than Maddox. Maddox had, just wasn't a hard thrower. Right. But he could hit any corner he wanted. Nobody had command like Greg Maddox. And Pedro learned a lot from watching him. He was also very proud that his Cy Young with Montreal in '97 kind of broke, I don't know how many years it was, where either Maddox, Smoltz, or Glavine had won the Cy Young.
Right, from '91 to '96, yeah, he broke it.
Yeah, he was
Think about that.
Yeah, so in '96 was Pedro's first All-Star game, and he watched Glavine and Maddox throw their bullpen session. And he had never known that you could throw your changeup to a certain part of the strike zone. And he was amazed when Glavine said, like, what do you mean? You just throw your changeup? You aren't trying to aim it? And he's like, no, I never knew that. I was like, oh, so the light bulb went on with that. He was always trying to pick the brains of other pitchers and whatnot. There's a whole chapter in here about the Zimmer episode. Pedro was, as you know, all the events that preceded that, with getting in a shouting match with Jorge Posada. He had hit Kareem Garcia, barely, Pedro thought, and then Garcia took out Todd Walker at second base with a dirty slide, and Pedro, yelled at him. The tensions were really high. And of course, Manny Ramirez totally lost it with Roger Clemens. So Pedro was all worked up, but he was in the dugout, and he came out when the fight started with Manny and Clemens, and he was stunned to see Don Zimmer headed towards him. And if Don Zimmer had not said, "You son of a," and he never got the words out, he never completed it, but Pedro knew where he was going with that. And if you insult Pedro's mother, you're dead to him. So that is the ultimate thing. So he knew he had to take care of it. And he wishes, though, in hindsight, that he had just, instead of kind of helping Don Zimmer fall to the ground a little bit faster, that's the way Pedro says it in the book, he wishes instead that he had just run around and let Zimmer chase him around Fenway Park, and everyone would think it was some kind of, really funny scene. This old man chasing a young pitcher. And he wishes that would be the response he made. It's his one and only regret that he had on the baseball diamond, at least. Yeah, well, he has a couple homes in the Dominican Republic. He has a nice place in Miami Beach, and he sold his place. He used to live in Allendale Farms out here in Boston, part of JP. He doesn't have that anymore. He used to have a place in Westchester, New York. But he kind of floats around between mainly Miami and South Beach. He's an analyst. He does playoff coverage for TBS during the playoffs. This year he began working for MLB TV. About once a month he goes in for like 2 or 3 days to New Jersey and is a studio analyst there. He also still works with the Red Sox as an instructor. He helps both major league and minor leaguers. Although this year, I'm pretty sure he's barely done a lick of it when he's not out promoting the book. That was 5 days. He's been doing a lot of TV, and obviously there's a lot of demands on his time with the Hall of Fame coming up. So he's been pretty busy on that front. I'm not really sure what he's going to do. Like after the Hall of Fame, I'm sure he'll take a long vacation. He really enjoys the TV work quite a bit. From what I hear, he takes it very seriously, unlike some of the talent, the ex-baseball players who show up on MLB TV. He goes there and he attends the production meetings. This is a guy who never attended pitchers meetings as a pitcher, but he goes to the production meetings because I think he never wants to be caught off guard. And so he's actually a very diligent student when there's a learning curve there. When it's not there, we all know what happened. But I think he likes that so far. So I think he'll do that for the time being, but I'm not sure how long that will interest him. I know he'll never be a coach. Just no way he can show up at the ballpark at noon every day and leave at midnight. That is not Pedro. not at all. It's a hard time getting him to show up on time for games. So. Oh, definitely Jason Varitek. Yeah, his first year he pitched to Scott Hatteberg, and who was all right, but as Pedro puts it in the book, he realized that he wanted to work with Jason Varitek, and he hired Jason Varitek as his catcher. And the two of them developed a real rapport. Jason understood what Pedro wanted to do. Jason had more of a scientific approach to calling pitches. Pedro was more intuitive. He would read the batters. He'd actually look to see how they're gripping the bat, whether they're moving their feet up or down in the batter's box. Pedro would be feeling the wind in his face. If so, he would throw his changeup. If it was behind him, he'd throw his fastball more. So that way Jason knew, what pitches to call for, and they had a great relationship. So he liked some of his other guys in Philadelphia and New York, but no one like Varitek. Yeah, well, the one coach who comes off not too well in this book is Joe Kerrigan, who was his pitching coach in Montreal, as well as, much to Pedro's surprise, that when he got traded to Boston, he was also the pitching coach here. Was not what he expected. He didn't like him. Joe Kerrigan would touch him, poke him in the chest when he wanted to get a point across. Didn't like that at all. Coaches he did like: Guy Conti with the Dodgers as a minor league coach. He became very close with him and his wife. He called him his white daddy. He taught him the changeup. He had been throwing Ramon's changeup, but it turns out Pedro's fingers were not long enough to grip the ball correctly, and Guy Conti taught him a different one, more of a circle changeup, and that became a crucial pitch for him. So he was always indebted to him. Bobby Cuellar was a coach with the Montreal Expos, who he really worked well with the year that everything kind of clicked for him in '96 and then '97. And
90s was a great era.
Yeah, definitely, right. And Tommy Harper also with the Montreal and Boston was a favorite of his. He taught Pedro how to cool it and control his emotions. The latter. They never stopped that. I mean, it didn't change anything. I think Ramon was happy for him. Pedro he didn't lord it over Ramon in any way. Ramon was and remains the leader of that family, and Pedro's very respectful, and he knows that Ramon was responsible in many ways for how Pedro became who he became. So, yeah, they're still very close, and he'll be all the family. I believe there's up to I saw something that Pedro said he's bringing 60 people from Mono Guayabo in the Dominican Republic up there. I have no idea how that's going to work. It's going to be a zoo, but it should be loud. I'm looking forward to it. That's good. That's a good trivia question. He spent the last half of 2009 with the Philadelphia Phillies. And he pitched in the World Series. His last game was the last game of that World Series. You're welcome. Well, there's a lot of that in the book. There's actually pretty good chemistry back then. There wasn't much dissension like later on. 2001 was a particularly bad year. Pedro got hurt, Varitek got hurt, Garciaparra got hurt, and so no problems. In 2004, the team was very tight. He and Schilling maintained a professional relationship, which means they were cordial with one another, but they each realized they had very little in common. And that's not unusual in any clubhouse. But of course, each one came with baggage, so to speak. And Schilling was a much better pitcher in 2004. And so that was kind of challenging for Pedro. He was also worried about what his next team was going to be in 2004. He was distracted. The team was really good, but he was a pending free agent. And Schilling was there. He was the guy. He knew Francona. Pedro was a little threatened by that. But that was a very tight, those 5 pitchers, nobody missed a start that season, which is really rare. along with Derek Lowe, Bronson Arroyo, and Tim Wakefield. Those 5 guys never missed a start. So, and it was good. And there's also lots of stuff in the book about, the idiots of 2004, and the stuff about Manny Ramirez and Mama Juana concoction. That I won't go into too much detail right here because there's young ones here. Okay, if there's nothing else, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. A great audience. Thank you very much.
Like a cheap toy springing forward with a stuttering mechanical jerk, I'd send the ball bouncing erratically a few feet in front of me, like this. Or like, yeah.